We are immediately plunging into a world right on the brink. Imagine Narnia, the land of talking beasts and ancient magic, not falling to an invading army, but collapsing under the weight of an insidious manufactured lie.
Yeah, and we are far from the comfort of Cair Paravel. We're way up to the west, near the great waterfall Cauldron Pool.
And the sound you'd hear is not celebration. It's described as everlasting thunder. And the feeling is just one of profound abandonment,
It really is. Today we are diving deep into C.S. Lewis's final text, The Last Battle.
which is just a masterclass in how a fantasy world is dismantled, not by superior force, but by, well, by intellectual corruption and propaganda.
And it's so crucial to understand this isn't just a simple fantasy finale. Lewis uses this text to deliver a scathing critique of political manipulation and the calculated destruction of absolute moral truth.
So our mission today is to take this single, deeply significant source material and really dissect the essential lessons. We're going to focus on the highly sophisticated techniques used to convince an entire kingdom that their god has become the devil.
Exactly. And you, the listener, are probably intensely curious about how a world once so purely magical meets its final fate.
And how its inhabitants handle what can only be described as absolute state-sponsored gaslighting. It feels like a pretty urgent question for us today to see just how easy it is to replace reality with a convenient narrative.
We have to analyze the strategies of the deceivers, the cynical ape, the calculating Calormenes, and even the self-interested Narnians.
And contrast them with the reactions of the faithful, like the king, the loyal unicorn.
And of course, the tragically distrustful dwarfs. The initial tension is set immediately. The young king, Tirian, finds his world just crumbling due to a horrifying widespread rumor.
Aslan has returned.
But he is no longer kind. In fact, he now demands slavery and submission to Narnia's darkest enemies.
So we have to start not with the king or some threat of invasion, but with the very genesis of the lie itself. Lewis chooses to start the end of the world with the most petty local form of vice.
That's right. Let's head to the Western Wild and analyze the fabrication of the false prophet.
Lewis is just brilliant here because he shows that great evil often springs from something really small, domestic selfishness.
That's it. We meet the antagonists, Shift the ape, and Puzzle the donkey in the seemingly insignificant Western Wild. And the power dynamic between them is the foundational element of the entire conspiracy. It's pure parasitic exploitation.
Shift is just physically unpleasant. He's described as the cleverest, ugliest, and most wrinkled ape.
Yeah.
But his real power is, purely rhetorical manipulation.
Absolutely. Puzzle the donkey does all the work. He's carrying water, running errands to towns like Chippingford.
While Shift claims the lion's share of the resources.
And Shift's primary weapon is psychological abuse disguised as, rational policy. He constantly uses this refrain, "You know you're not clever, Puzzle."
Just reinforcing the donkey's low self-esteem over and over.
Exactly. And since Shift claims he can't eat grass and thistles, he argues it's only fair that he gets the nicest things that Puzzle works so hard to get.
And Puzzle just accepts it. He feels guilty, believing Shift is kinder than he deserves.
Lewis is showing that a dictatorship begins when one party fully accepts their own inferiority.
It's a perfect microcosm of tyranny. The manipulator convinces the exploited that their exploitation is not only justified, but it's even a form of generosity.
But the actual tool for the kingdom's collapse arrives via the landscape itself, the dangerous, churning waters of Cauldron Pool.
The setting there feels highly symbolic.
It is. The pool is where the great waterfall pours down with a noise like everlasting thunder, and it's constantly dangerous, especially in spring because of the melted snow.
And in this foaming chaos, Shift spots the catalyst, a yellow thing floating.
So let me ask you, why do you think Lewis chooses an ape to be the primary deceiver? A more traditional narrative might feature a wizard or a dark knight, but here we have a common animal.
That's a critical question. I think the ape, in Lewis's symbolism, often represents a kind of base materialism, cunning without any wisdom, a descent from higher values.
Right. Shift isn't interested in cosmic power, is he? He's interested in a comfortable living and just having control over Puzzle.
He represents that small, self-serving bureaucratic evil that is so much more common and ultimately more effective than some grand dark lord. He's a pragmatist.
And that pragmatism immediately rears its ugly head. Shift, citing his weak chest and feigning illness, manipulates Puzzle into retrieving the object from the dangerous, churning water.
And Puzzle, just driven by guilt and fear of disappointing his superior, dives into this brutal physical ordeal.
The text details his struggles so vividly. He's being hit by foam, going under, getting carried around, and ultimately being bruised and numb.
And when he finally gets it, a large, heavy, cold, slimy lion's skin shift doesn't spare a single thought for Puzzle's safety.
Not one. His singular focus is the utility of the object.
So the lion's skin, killed by a man in the Western wild, it triggers an immediate and very appropriate reaction from Puzzle.
It does. He instinctively suggests they should give it a decent burial, acknowledging the deep solemnity surrounding Aslan. He says, "Aren't all lions rather solemn because of you-know-who?"
But Shift, the pure materialist, just rejects any sense of solemnity or reverence. He dismisses the idea of a talking lion and sees only potential.
Right, and there's that interesting detail that he'd been taught to sew by the dwarfs, so he'd absorbed skills from Narnian culture. And he immediately modifies the skin, cutting the body, making a long collar, sewing the head back on.
He's anxious, constantly worrying about talking birds seeing him, which proves that he knows internally that he is committing a secret illicit act.
So he's not driven by ideology yet, just self-preservation and cunning.
And when Puzzle finally tries on this grotesque costume, the lie officially begins. But the costume is so ridiculous. I mean, no one who had actually seen Aslan would be fooled.
Shift anticipates this, I think, and he focuses on the lowest common denominator, fear and distance. He insists that if anyone saw Puzzle now, they'd think he was Aslan.
Puzzle objects, of course. He calls it disrespectful, and he asks the most logical question a Narnian could possibly ask. What if the real Aslan turns up?
And Shift's rationalization for the impersonation is just chilling because it reflects the slow erosion of faith Lewis is targeting. Shift says Aslan probably sent us the lion skin on purpose so that we could set things to right.
Then he delivers the true core of his cynicism.
Anyway, he never does turn up, you know. Not nowadays.
Oof. That phrase, "not nowadays," it feels like the theological turning point of the entire saga.
It is. It's the dismissal of the divine based on a lack of immediate, visible presence. Lewis places the ultimate catastrophe precisely on this moment of casual, faithless rejection.
And Lewis immediately answers that dismissal with a terrifying cosmic counterpunch. The second shift finishes the phrase, "There is a great thunderclap right overhead."
And the ground trembles with a small earthquake. Both animals are thrown to the ground.
It's an immediate physical sign that this blasphemy is being observed. Puzzle interprets it correctly, screaming that they are doing something dreadfully wicked.
But Shift's mind, the text tells us, worked very quickly. He doesn't panic. He processes the terror and integrates it into his lie.
He flips the sign 180 degrees. He claims he was just about to say that if the real Aslan meant them to go on, he would send a thunderclap and an earth tremor.
And the sign came before he could even finish the sentence, proving his point.
This is the perfect mechanism of intellectual dishonesty. He weaponizes ambiguity.
Divine terror is instantly rebranded as proof of divine instruction.
And Puzzle, intellectually outmatched and already conditioned to subservience, simply submits. He concedes that he doesn't understand signs.
And so the lie is now protected by fear, manufactured meaning, and the donkey's willingness to distrust his own moral sense.
So while this small-scale corruption is blossoming, we jump forward 3 weeks. We find King Tirian.
He's young, idealistic, and physically powerful. He's at his hunting lodge, lantern waist, and filled with this initial joy.
Because the rumors spread by Narnian birds, squirrels, and even, alarmingly, a Calormene merchant suggest Aslan has indeed returned.
He's discussing this with his dearest friend, Jewel the unicorn. And Tirian's joy is based on this emotional hope. But Jewel, the more ancient and reflective creature, is already skeptical.
Right. He calls the tidings too beautiful to believe. This introduces the tension between profound yearning and practical suspicion.
They do cling to the central truth, however. He is not a tame lion. They know Aslan's ways are not always gentle.
But they are always good.
Exactly. But the news quickly shifts from possibly true but scary to definitively false and terrifying with the arrival of Runwit the centaur.
Lewis uses the centaurs as the voice of enduring cosmic truth. They study the stars. They live far longer than humans or most beasts.
And Runwit arrives in a fury, bringing dire astronomical news. He sees the cosmic truth. The stars, which never lie, foretell evil, not Aslan's coming.
This is the first definitive, reliable evidence of the deception. It contrasts the celestial mechanics with the terrestrial lies being spread by the ape.
So Tirian has a choice here. Believe the ancient, reliable, but abstract prophecy of the stars, or believe the hopeful, widespread but easily corrupted rumors of the land.
But before he can truly process Runewit's warning, the horrifying evidence just arrives.
The destruction begins with the sacred. A dryad, the nymph of a beech tree, appears crying, "Woe for the holy trees!" Lantern waste is being felled, 40 great trunks are down.
This violence against nature is just instantaneous.
And Lewis describes her death so brutally. As Tirian draws his sword, she shudders as if under repeated blows, then falls down and vanishes.
Confirming that her life, intrinsically tied miles away to her tree, has been violently extinguished by axes.
This immediate, visceral evil bypasses Tirian's logical thinking. His rage is just, but it leads to rashness.
He sends Runewit away to Cair Paravel with his ring requesting military aid, but he and Jewel don't wait. Their immediate impulsive charge into the unknown is a tragic flaw.
And that rashness immediately brings them face to face with the unthinkable command. They see a raft of newly cut logs on the river, logs that are clearly the Dryad's felled trees.
Steered by a water rat who gives the justification. "The lion's orders, sire, Aslan himself."
This is where the crisis deepens into despair. It's not just that Aslan might be inscrutable and scary. It's that he might be actively wicked.
The rat confirms the motive is not just felling the trees, but selling the timber to Narnia's historical cruel enemy, the Calormenes.
And Jewel murmurs he's a tame lion, wrestling with the possibility that the Great Lion's plans are so terrible they necessitate moral evil.
Tirian, however, pushes through the despair. They reach Lantern Waste, now described like a raw gash in the land.
And it's filled with dark, bearded Calormene men mixed with Narnian men and beasts, all engaged in the destruction of the forest.
And the final, defining outrage occurs when they witness two Calormenes savagely beating a horse straining to pull a log.
The horse screams, "Fool and tyrant, do you not see I'm doing all I can?" Revealing it is a talking horse of Narnia.
This is not an animal being used for labor. This is a citizen being tortured by foreigners, on the orders of its own king's supposed authority figure.
The dam breaks. Tirian and Jewel rush forward in a combined rage and kill both Calormenes instantly.
It's a moment of righteous fury, but it's immediately followed by a shattering moral clarity.
The enslaved horse confirms the terrifying news. Aslan is here. It is all by his orders.
This is the peak of Tirian's internal struggle. He immediately feels dishonored, not for the act of violence itself, but for striking unarmed men without defying them. An act of murder, not war. He calls himself two murderers.
Lewis forces upon him the impossible moral choice. Is this evil real, commanded by the source of all goodness, or is it a deception?
If the evil is real, then his violent defense of Narnia is treason against Aslan. If it's a deception, his act of killing is still murder, which stains his honor.
And he decides the only honorable path is to return and yield himself to Aslan's justice, whatever that justice may be.
Jewel's response encapsulates the ultimate crisis of faith. If Aslan is not Aslan, what life is left for me?
Their world is inverted. Tirian notes the horror in these impossible terms. A black sun or dry water.
Which is a metaphor that suggests that when the source of ultimate goodness, Aslan, the sun becomes evil, or the source of life water becomes inert,
then the fundamental laws of reality and morality just cease to function. They have entered a reality where they cannot trust their own moral compass.
So in a tragic act of honesty, Tirian and Jewel surrender. They're immediately tied up, and the Calormenes strip Tirian of his gold circlet.
A symbol of the instantaneous stripping of his legitimate authority. They're taken to Stable Hill for their tribunal, which is really just the operational center for the Aches regime.
And this is where we get the full picture of the usurped power structure. Shift the Ape is an absurdity, sitting there looking uglier, dressed in a scarlet jacket made for a dwarf.
Right, jeweled slippers that won't stay on, a stolen paper crown. He scratches himself and spits nutshells. He is physically and intellectually undignified, yet he holds all the authority.
And the Calormene captain immediately addresses him as the Lord Shift, mouthpiece of Aslan.
The Calormenes, representing absolute military and political power, establish Shift as the necessary religious intermediary.
And Shift begins his rule, not with grand policy, but with immediate arbitrary tyranny focused on practical logistics and resource control.
He punishes the squirrels instantly, demanding twice as many nuts by sunset tomorrow, specifying no small or bad ones. This is an impossible command because their winter hoards are nearly gone.
It's a perfect example of a dictator demanding impossible productivity based on pure whimsy.
And he immediately establishes distance from the faithful Narnians. He refuses to let the bewildered talking beasts see Aslan, claiming the lion finds them too stupid.
Right, and that the lion has been far too soft with you before. He creates a barrier between the people and the divine, consolidating all power into his own interpretive hands.
To justify this unique access, he attempts to redefine his own status. It's an act of cultural theft. He declares himself a man, claiming his ugliness is due to being hundreds of years old and therefore wise.
Making him the only one Aslan will speak to. This is the ape's desperate need to reject his own identity and assume the trappings of higher status, specifically human status, to validate his control.
But the major political blow comes with the slavery decree. Shift announces that Aslan and the Tisroc, the cruel king of Calormenes, have settled matters.
The ultimate betrayal.
And Lewis meticulously details the bureaucratic phrasing used to mask the cruelty. Horses, bulls, and donkeys will be sent to Calormenes for labor. Moles, rabbits, and dwarfs will work in the Tisroc's mines.
When the beasts protest this obvious slavery, Shift uses the cold economic lie.
You won't be slaves. You'll be paid very good wages, too. That is to say, your pay will be paid into Aslan's treasury, and he will use it all for everybody's good.
This is a devastating tactic. It's a form of economic enslavement where labor is extracted, but the wages are diverted to a mythical treasury controlled by the state.
It allows the oppressor to claim moral high ground while enacting total cruelty.
And then Shift promises improvement for Narnia, listing instruments of oppression masked as modernization. Roads, big cities, schools, offices.
And most tellingly, whips and muzzles and saddles and cages and kennels and prisons. Oh, everything.
Control is progress.
This political maneuvering lays the groundwork for the defining moment of intellectual corruption, the theological synthesis of Aslan.
And it comes from a young, woolly lamb, still innocent enough to lack the fear to stay silent. He asks the best question anyone had asked yet.
He asks the unanswerable question for the regime. How can Aslan, the source of goodness, be friends with the Calormenes god, Tash?
Cash, who's described as having a vulture head, 4 arms, and demanding human sacrifice. The lamb sees the moral absurdity immediately.
Shift's response is just blinding rage, hissing and spitting, calling the lamb a silly little bleeder. This rage confirms how sensitive the issue is. It shows the lie is not stable.
And then he drops the bomb of moral equivalence. Tash is only another name for Aslan, he insists. Cash is Aslan. Aslan is Tash.
Why is this synthesis so devastating? I mean, it's not just merging two deities, it's neutralizing morality itself.
Exactly. If the god of light and the god of darkness are fundamentally the same, then all moral action is meaningless. Cruelty is just another form of divine will. Kindness is just another mechanism for power.
It destroys the entire Narnian moral compass, replacing a universe of clear good and evil with a cynical and nihilistic gray area.
And once Narnians accept this, they have no grounds left for resistance because whatever the Calormenes do is simply Tashlan's will.
And this philosophical collapse is immediately seized upon by one of the cynical Narnian insiders, Ginger the cat.
Ginger, a large tom, remains bolt upright with cool precision and asks the Calormene captain, Rishnatar Khan, to confirm the equivalence. Aslan means no more than Tash.
This is the collaboration of cynicism and political power. The captain confirms it, looking the cat straight in the face.
And Ginger, the pragmatist, immediately states he is beginning to understand, which indicates he recognizes the utility of the lie. He doesn't believe it, but he knows he can profit from acting like he does.
It's the calculated betrayal of intellectual self-interest.
And Tirian, watching the destruction of everything he holds sacred, explodes, calling Shift a liar. But he's immediately struck down and tied to an ash tree. His moment of truth is physically silenced.
So the night then proceeds with these whispered details of the functional deception. Loyal mice, a rabbit, and moles secretly feed Tirian.
And they reveal that they saw Aslan come out of the stable last night like a terrible great lion, but they are utterly confused by his wicked orders.
This is the torment of the masses. They rely on their eyes and authority, yet the result is moral torture.
Tirian, tied up and watching, sees the midnight meeting himself. Shift bows 3 times, opens the stable door, and something on 4 legs, something that walked rather stiffly, comes out.
It is yellow and hairy. It says nothing. The ape whispers to it, and it waddled back in.
It's the visual confirmation of the fraud, a disguised animal. Tirian, connecting the dots, the yellow skin, the Tashlan nonsense, realizes the whole thing must be a cheap fraud.
The horror shifts from theological despair to political outrage.
In absolute desperation, he calls out. He first calls to Aslan, and failing that, cries out across the world to the human children, friends of Narnia.
That moment is so profound because it demonstrates the power of desperate faith cutting across ontological boundaries. He doesn't call for help, he calls for witnesses to the truth.
And his call is immediately answered by a vivid shared vision of the Pevensies, Diggory, and Polly around a table. Peter, the High King, charges the Phantom to speak in Aslan's name.
Lewis confirms that even when the physical world is failing, true loyalty can pierce the fabric of reality.
And the result of that desperate plea is immediate and astounding. Jill Pole and Eustace Scrubb instantly appear beside Tirian, cutting him free.
We have to note the time difference here. Tyrion's 10 minutes spent tied up was a full week in their world. It confirms the elasticity of Narnian time.
They explain their journey, which is just as violent as Narnia's internal strife. They didn't use the magic rings.
No, Aslan intervened directly, pulling them from a terrible railway accident in England into Narnia.
Which immediately links Narnia's final days to the children's own mortality in their world. It sets a grim, high-stakes tone.
It does. Tirian, stiff and numb, leads them to an old garrison tower for recovery. This is where he equips them, arming them with Calormene mail and swords and a juice to rub on their skin.
To make them brown as Calormenes for disguise. It's a necessary, pragmatic step, requiring them to shed their Narnian identity to fight for Narnia.
And Lewis makes a small but significant observation here. Even in the dying moments of the world, the Narnian air has its fundamental transformative power.
Tirian observes that the children have become much stronger and bigger and more grown-up in just that brief rest.
Narnia itself, in its essence, resists the corruption, strengthening those who come to its aid.
The next piece of vital information arrives via an escapee. Poggin the dwarf, the single loyal dwarf in the entire regiment.
He escapes a column being led to the salt pits, confirming the betrayal of his own people.
And Poggin's intelligence is catastrophic because it reveals the total cynicism at the top. He overheard a secret meeting between Ginger the cat and Rishta Tarkane,
where they explicitly state there's no such person as either Tash or Aslan. The ape's deception was simply a tool they were using.
Their plan is pure, cold Machiavellianism. Use the ape until they can discard him, and then bring in enlightened Narnians who care neither for Tash nor Aslan, but have only an eye to their own profit.
This isn't just about religious corruption. It's about the total ideological shift to amoral, self-interested materialism as the governing principle.
And the external political doom is sealed moments later by the arrival of Farsight the Eagle, the bearer of catastrophic news.
Cara Parabel, the heart and symbol of Narnia, has been taken from the sea by 20 Calormene ships. The Tisrock's banner flies, and the land is filled with dead Narnians.
The war is effectively over.
And devastatingly, Runewit the Centaur, the voice of astronomical truth from earlier, is dead. He was shot by a Calormene arrow.
But not before delivering his dying message, which is one of Lewis's most powerful philosophical pronouncements.
All worlds draw to an end, and that noble death is a treasure which no one is too poor to buy.
Runewit's message reframes the entire mission. It is no longer about winning the physical war, which is already lost, but about achieving a noble end.
And Tirian accepts this truth, declaring the single, shattering line, so Narnia is no more.
This changes the nature of their final stand. The entire group, Tirian, Jill, Eustace, Jewel, Poggin, Farsight, and Puzzle, decide to return to Stable Hill.
Not for victory, but to expose the deception, knowing they are doomed to die.
Their commitment is purely moral. Eustace and Jill articulate this defiant stance,
saying they'd rather be killed fighting for Narnia than grow old and stupid at home and perhaps go about in a bath chair and then die in the end just the same.
They are prioritizing a meaningful death, one defined by integrity, over a physically longer but spiritually pointless life.
So the great confrontation is planned around exposing the fraud. As the gong beats, Jill sneaks to Puzzle, cuts the cords, and removes the lion skin, hiding it.
They intend to reveal the costume as irrefutable physical evidence.
But Shift, demonstrating what Tirian later calls his cursed cleverness, preempts them.
He starts the meeting by declaring a new wicked deed. It has dressed itself up in a lion skin and is wandering about in these very woods pretending to be Aslan. It's a donkey.
This is a brilliant piece of propaganda. The ape has taken the single piece of physical evidence that would prove his fraud and woven it into his bigger, ongoing lie.
He has immunized the deception against the truth. Tirian realizes that the physical evidence is now useless because the ape has already claimed it as part of his false narrative.
This moment of intellectual despair is compounded by the reaction of the cynical dwarfs. They demand proof, singing their nihilistic motto, "Seeing is believing."
So, Shift, under pressure, changes the rules. Aslan will not come out. They must go in one at a time. The stable door becomes a terrifying mystery box.
And Ginger the cat coolly volunteers. Being part of the plot, he believes he will see nothing and simply report back that there is nothing inside, solidifying the cynicism.
But seconds after entering the darkness, a horrible caterwaul sounds. Ginger flies out, tail bristled, eyes like saucers of green fire. He dashes up a tree, utterly terrified.
And the cat can no longer talk. He is now only an ordinary ugly cat.
For the Narnians, whose history began with Aslan making the beasts speak, the loss of speech is seen as the ultimate curse, a horrifying confirmation that the sacred structure of their world has been broken.
The lie has physically destroyed the collaborator.
The cynical plotters are terrified, but then comes the moment of true faith. Emeth, a young, high-ranking Calormene Tarkhan, steps forward.
He insists on going in, arguing that if Tash and Aslan are one, he, a devout servant of Tash, should see his god.
His desire is genuine. He walks in, solemn and shining-eyed, seeking truth, regardless of the terror.
And moments later, a figure is thrown out, but it is not Emeth. It is an older, bearded Calormene, the sentry set to kill Narnians who entered the stable.
This suggests that Emeth was met not with death, but with a reality that pulled him off the chessboard.
When Rishta Tarkhan tries to force a boar into the stable, Tirian can bear the calculated cruelty no longer.
He charges out, sword drawn, delivering the rallying cry that summarizes the moral universe. Here stand I, Tirian of Narnia in Aslan's name, to prove with my body that Tash is a foul fiend, the ape a manifold traitor, and these Calormenes worthy of death.
His integrity is instantly rewarded by the loyal remnant. All the talking dogs immediately rush to Tirian's side, barking joyously and licking faces. The smaller creatures follow.
This is the moral gravity of Narnia reasserting itself. Loyalty follows integrity, not power.
The initial skirmish goes surprisingly well, but it is marred by the loss of the bear, who dies muttering the tragic refrain, I don't understand.
That line is heartbreaking. He dies loyal, but utterly confused by the theological and political complexity of the end.
Just as the small force holds, the final act of internal political treachery occurs. The dwarfs seal the doom.
New Calormene forces arrive. But when the newly freed talking horses charge up the hill to aid the king, the dwarfs shoot arrows into them.
Their final, cynical manifesto. The dwarfs are for the dwarfs. They refuse to side with anyone, having been fooled once by the Shift Aslan lie.
They choose absolute isolation, believing both sides, Tirian and the Calormenes, are just as big humbugs. They prefer to sit in the rubble and hurt everyone equally.
Lewis portrays cultivated distrust as a self-imposed prism.
So the combined force of Calormenes and dwarf pharaohs is overwhelming. The Narnians retreat to the White Rock. Eustace is captured and flung into the stable door.
And Tirian realizes with grim clarity that the enemy has been deliberately driving him toward the stable. They fear what is inside, yet they use it as a weapon to dispose of the king.
In a desperate, final, suicidal move, Tirian drops his sword, grabs Rishta Tarkhan, and throws himself backward into the stable, shouting the ultimate challenge.
Come in and meet Tash yourself.
The instantaneous change in environment defies all physical law. Tirian is stunned to find himself standing in strong light, on grass, under a deep blue sky.
The stable door, that humble opening, contains a reality infinitely larger than the physical world outside it.
And Rishta Tarkhan, the cynical man who used Tash's name for profit, points, wails, and falls face down, shaking. His materialist worldview dissolves instantly into pure terror.
Tash, the hideous figure with a vulture's head and 4 arms, appears. Lewis is very specific. He is smaller than the shape they imagined from the tower, but still much bigger than a man.
Tash pounces on Rishta. The Calormene captain meets the god he mocked and used for profit, proving that even false gods are real when served with cruelty.
But before Tash can claim Tirian, a voice, strong and calm as the summer sea, commands, "Begone, monster, and take your lawful prey to your own place, in the name of Aslan and Aslan's great father, the emperor over the sea."
Tash and Rishta vanish. The line establishes the ultimate hierarchy. Aslan serves the emperor over the sea, the ultimate good.
Tirian turns and sees 7 figures. The Pevensies, Diggory, and Polly, all wearing crowns and glittering clothes, clean and fresh.
Peter the High King welcomes him. The children, whom he called out to in his desperation, have answered him and arrived into a higher reality.
The reunion is joyful, but it's immediately overshadowed by the question of Queen Susan.
When Tirian asks for her, Peter gravely says she is no longer a friend of Narnia.
Jill provides the detail, explaining that Susan is only interested in being grown up, focusing exclusively on nylons and lipstick and invitations, wasting her life trying to stay that age.
This is a devastating critique Lewis offers about prioritizing the superficial trappings of mundane, materialist adulthood over genuine growth and faith.
The Lady Polly provides the sharpest commentary, noting that Susan wasted her life trying to race to that silly age and stop there. Susan represents the ultimate tragedy of losing one's wonder and choosing the Shadowlands over the real country.
Peter then explains the stable door, which is now a freestanding wooden frame. Tirian looks through a crack and sees the dim, dark world of Narnia, where the Calormenes are debating burning the stable.
This stable door is a portal between the fading old world and the vibrant real one.
Queen Lucy provides the profound theological key to this paradox. In our world, too, a stable once had something inside it that was bigger than our whole world.
The humble exterior housing the eternal interior.
Aslan appears, huge and real. And Lucy, ever the compassionate one, asks him to help the dwarves, who are still sitting nearby in a tight circle, refusing to move.
Aslan performs a miracle of abundance right on the dwarf's knees, a magnificent feast of pies, trifles, and wine.
But the dwarfs, having chosen cynicism as their master, taste only stable refuse. Hay, dirty water, and turnip. They fight over the imaginary scraps.
They have weaponized their own minds against reality.
And Aslan delivers one of the most sobering lines in the entire series, explaining their tragic fate.
They will not let us help them. They have chosen cunning instead of belief. Their prison is only in their own minds, yet they are in that prison, and so afraid of being taken in that they cannot be taken out.
The greatest threat to the dwarfs isn't external power. It is internal, cultivated distrust that renders them impervious to salvation or joy.
Then Emeth, the faithful Calormene Tarkane, arrives, solemn and shining-eyed. He tells his story of seeking Tash and instead meeting the real Aslan.
Whose hair was like pure gold and whose eyes were like gold that is liquid in the furnace.
Emeth asks the critical question that the whole war was fought over. Are Aslan and Tash one? Aslan roars, "It is false, not because he and I are one, but because we are opposites."
This is Lewis's absolute repudiation of the Tashlan synthesis and the moral equivalence that Schiff championed.
And Aslan reveals the key to the moral universe, a concept that transcends dogma.
Stating, "All the service thou hast done to Tash, I account as service done to me. For I and he are of such different kinds that no service which is vile can be done to me, and none which is not vile can be done to him."
This is a truly radical theological truth. Lewis asserts that intention and moral action matter infinitely more than the religious label used.
If a man keeps an oath sworn by Tash for the oath's sake, it is Aslan whom he has truly served, because integrity belongs to Aslan.
Conversely, if a man does a cruelty in Aslan's name, it is Tash whom he serves. The concept that for all find what they truly seek is confirmed here. Emeth sought true divinity and justice, and he found Aslan even under the guise of Tash.
Aslan then utters the ultimate command, time. And they watch through the stable door as the physical Narnia, the Shadowland, meets its end.
The end is spectacular and apocalyptic. Father Time, the giant who has slept for ages on the northern moorlands, wakes and blows his horn.
The stars, which Lewis reveals are glittering people, fall like silver rain and stand behind them, casting a fierce white light over the scene.
Monsters, dragons, and giant lizards crawl into Narnia and devour the forests, reducing the country to bare rock. The sea rises, overwhelming the land until the world is a level sheet of water.
The sun begins its death, dark red, and 3 times, 20 times as big as it ought to be. The moon approaches it, and the two burn together.
Until Father Time squeezes the sun in his hand like an orange. Total darkness and ice-cold air prevail. Peter, the High King, locks the stable door behind them.
They then walk westward toward Aslan, who shouts the command that defines their eternal path. Come further in, come further up.
The new land is immediately recognized. It is a deeper, more wonderful copy of the old Narnia, the real Narnia.
The unicorn cries, "This is my real country, I belong here." The difference is subtle, yet profound. The new world is an eternal archetype, where everything seems to mean more than its fleeting, shadowed counterpart.
Their new bodies feel no fatigue. They swim up the great waterfall effortlessly, run faster than arrows, tireless, until they reach golden gates guarded by Reepicheep the mouse.
One of the greatest heroes of Narnia, who welcomes them in the lion's name.
Inside, the garden is far larger than it had seemed from outside. Lucy realizes the paradox of the stable is the paradox of eternity. The further up and the further in you go, the bigger everything gets. The inside is larger than the outside.
This is the ultimate payoff for their loyalty.
Lucy's new sight allows her to see the real England within England, where no good thing is destroyed. This includes Professor Kirk's house and, crucially, their parents.
It is the eternal, perfected copy of their world, where all goodness is preserved.
The final word is delivered by Aslan, softly and clearly to the children who feared being sent away. He confirms the reality of their physical passing.
There was a real railway accident. Your father and mother and all of you are, as you used to call it in the Shadowlands, dead. The term is over. The holidays have begun. The dream has ended. This is the morning.
The end of Narnia was the beginning of their true life.
What Lewis delivers in this final deep dive into Narnia is a set of timeless philosophical and political lessons. We saw the core strategy of deception, the political weaponization of religious synthesis, or Tashlan.
Designed specifically to neutralize morality and justify oppression. By merging good and evil, you destroy the very concept of good.
We witnessed the tragic failure of the dwarfs, who chose cultivated cynicism as their defense mechanism. They were so terrified of being fooled that they made themselves spiritually blind.
Imprisoning themselves in a dark, imaginary stable of hay and water, effectively isolating themselves from any form of redemption or joy.
And most redemptively, we saw the revelation of true faith through Imith's service. The idea that moral action transcends dogma, and that the quality of service dictates which ultimate opposing force accepts it.
Lewis makes the absolute case for integrity, even in the face of annihilation, confirming that the path to Aslan is built not on labels, but on goodness.
Lewis makes it clear that all their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover and the title page. They were only starting chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on Earth has read.
The story of the Shadowlands is over, but the reality is just beginning.
So what does this magnificent source material mean for you, the listener? The story suggests that all find what they truly seek. If the end of all our experiences in the Shadowlands is merely the cover and title page of a great story, what unexpected, eternal truths are you unknowingly pursuing in your current life?
If you look at the example of Emeth, whose integrity made his service to a false god acceptable to the true lion, it raises a provocative final question. What service are you doing right now, driven by personal integrity and genuine desire for goodness that might be accepted and honored by an unexpected greater force? Remember, the pursuit of truth, regardless of the labels you use, is often the path that leads you further up and further in.